Select Board Meeting, Monday, September 26th at 7 p.m. The meeting here is at the Arcan Meeting Room, and as is customary, we're going to stand and honor our America by pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. We have Hallie Glassman. I thought it was Hallie Glassman from Playability Foundation. We would like to present you, or not me, but my cohort's over here to my right, Kelly, to present you with a check. So Kelly.
So if you want to come on over here, we'll explain. So for everyone watching and or people who don't know, in August, this is the second year we've hosted a weekend that we call Bellingham Days. And as part of Bellingham Days, we do a 9-hole golf tournament where we sell some raffles. We have the carnival that comes into town, and part of this whole big fundraising that we get to take part of is if we supply the volunteers for all the ticket booths for the carnival, we get a percentage of the proceeds. So what we typically do is we reach out to the community. We ask community groups if they would like to help staff these ticket booths, and then they get the proceeds. So our proceeds from the weekend, and I will say Hallie, who is spearheading the Our Playability Fund, which is trying to raise funds to build an all-inclusive playground at Stallbrook Elementary School. Hallie was there every single day. Her husband Jeremy is here, and I'm gonna point him out because he did about 95% of the time with her in the ticket booths. We all became very, very close over the weekend. It was a lot of fun, but we ended up raising $9,861 over the weekend. This whole weekend, but Hallie was great to work with. She had volunteers. Green is their color. Yeah. So I tried to do everything in green. And it was just so much fun. And it was fun getting to know them and work with them. And the fact that we get to raise some funds to go to this great cause for our community is just amazing. So all the hard work is worth it. So thank you for doing all the really hard work. I am grateful for that because it took stuff off my plate. So I am very happy to present you with that. So that was our final tally for Carnival Golf raffles.
Yes. Plus, I think from the golf, I also got about $200 something from the 50-50 raffle. So this
Yep,
we'll
so
just
we cleared 10,000.
Yeah.
Do you want to come down?
Yeah. And Hallie, for the folks that are watching on TV,
Yes.
And for the folks here, it would be great if you could just explain a little bit about your foundation, what
Absolutely.
you're doing. That'd be wonderful if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna smile here first.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll smile
And
first.
So Hallie is a special education teacher at Stallbrook. So she's very much entrenched in our community. How's that?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Where should I go?
You can go, you can sit right over there.
Yeah.
There should be a mic there.
The mic is just picking you up. It's kind of
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Hi, so yes, Kelly mentioned I am a special education teacher at Stallbrook. And I work with the students from kindergarten through 3rd grade who require the greatest level of support throughout their day. And it occurred to us last year when one of our students who was wheelchair bound wasn't able to access the playground safely, that we needed to do something about it. When I got some playground manufacturers in to look at our play space, they were like, oh, well, unfortunately, we would have to redo everything to make it accessible. And I was like, all right. And then it was $250,000. And I still decided that that would be reasonable. And here we are. So I have recently, the Stallbrook PTO was kind enough, they raised the readathon funds in March. We got just under $12,000 from that. I had the Touch a Truck event that Dennis helped me out a lot with in May. which raised about $16,000. This, which is about $10,000, various fundraisers from UNOS, they're fantastic. And then I just heard from the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism that they are going to offer me fiscal sponsorship so that I can apply for grants using their 501c3 number.
That's
That is so
fantastic.
exciting because you were
Congratulations.
talking about that this summer and hoping that that would come through. So that is absolutely
It's huge
Oh,
because
so
um,
great.
as
It is.
great as $10,000 checks here and little things like that, the goal will only be reached with grant money.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it was a lot of pressure trying to figure out how to start my own nonprofit. So now I don't have to. And the Doug Flutie Jr.
Awesome.
Foundation is there. I mean, they have a lot of great connections. They're able to help support me in my fundraising, and it really opens the door for a lot more disability advocacy and awareness amongst the whole community. So,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you
amazing.
very
Thank you for
much.
having me
That's
here.
great.
I know.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
for coming in. So I will also give a shout out because she has also been doing the Touch a Truck along with Dennis and May, helping me staff the carnival, pretty much staffing a lot of it, her and Jeremy themselves, just a few weeks out from their own wedding. So on top of doing all of that and then getting ready to be married that's a lot. So I give her so much credit, and it
we
was
also-
a great
Yeah.
summer. Yeah,
Yeah.
tons for Jeremy. He was my amazing money guy.
Yeah.
Every bill was the right way, and it made things so much easier too. So we thank you both very much for all of your help, and we're so happy to give you this check tonight.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm, like I said, happy to take it.
Good.
Thank
Now go
you.
hang it up in the classroom.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you so
very
much, guys, for coming in.
Good luck.
All right,
Thank you.
everyone. Next on our agenda, we have UNOS. We have a representative from UNOS here this evening. Hi, good evening. We, a change of manager.
Yep, have a seat.
Have a seat. Yeah, I see it. So your name, please?
My name is Blair Wells.
Blair Wells, and you work currently at UNOS?
UNOS in Bellingham. I've
UNOS.
been with them for about 17 years
Great, okay.
in numerous locations.
Mhm. And you are now going to be becoming the manager, or are you naming somebody else for the manager? I'm not,
I am the general manager.
okay, great,
I started there, I want to say 5 months ago,
okay,
and I'm currently the general manager there with another manager.
excellent, right. Well, and you just heard you got a shout out here for your various fundraising activities.
Yep.
So you do a lot for the community, which is fantastic.
And,
So,
I love helping out. I'm going to give a call if there's anything else I can do. I'd love to, help with the cause, the great cause.
excellent. Are there any questions from the board?
No.
No, no. I will call for a vote to approve the, I guess what we call the change of manager. So, so moved.
Second?
We have a first, we have a second. Any further questions, discussions? None? All approved? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Great, congratulations.
Thank
Thanks-
you.
Thanks for everything you do.
That was easy.
Absolutely.
I got my day off. so I can enjoy the rest of it.
Nice.
There you go.
Oh,
Really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Every
Excellent.
meeting.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Okay, Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, we have Matt Lanza and Pauline Hunt here this evening. Here. Come up. Matt and Pauline with the Hill Group, and they put together a analysis for us of our self-insured plan, kind of a self-checkup. We haven't done it in a long time. As you know, we self-insure for health insurance, which essentially means that we put the money in the bank and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Harvard Pilgrim take it out to pay the bills, but we have an arrangement with them where we pay an administrative fee to each of them. We also have stop loss insurance, which means we're protected after $160,000 in claims is what our stop loss is. But we've had this self-insured arrangement since the early 1980s. We did an analysis back about 2010 to see how we were doing. And the decision was made that we're doing okay and we should continue onward. We've had some bumps in the road. About 4 or 5 years ago, if you recall, we short about $1.5 million, had to add some money in. We had a couple of bad years and we committed to taking a look at our self-insurance plan and see how it's performing. And Matt did a great job putting together an approach that really would give us an idea as to how we're doing and what we can expect reasonably in the year ahead. And I think it's something that we want to do on an annual basis now. We want to update this continuously. And with that said, as an introduction, you've got the executive summary, the actual report, if anyone wanted to see it, is much more extensive, but this gives us a summary, and I know Matt's gonna give us a little presentation tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Beth, for the opportunity. Thank you, board, for allowing us to come in today. It's not as glamorous as talking about raising funds for, great causes. We got to talk about insurance, so hopefully no one falls asleep in the next 20 minutes. But as Dennis mentioned, we were assigned the task of taking a look at your current self-insured health medical plan and to see whether or not it made sense over the last few years to be self-funded versus buying fully insured insurance, and then what we thought the projections were going forward. It's difficult oftentimes to kind of look in the rearview mirror and say, did it make sense over the last 4 years? But we tried our best to try to back into numbers that are within industry trends, because we didn't know, what insurance would have cost 4 years ago without actually getting a quote 4 years ago. So what we did is we got a quote currently, and then we use industry trend of about 7.5%, work backwards over the last 4 years, then looked at your actual loss ratios, and then put a specific rating factor in addition to the industry trend to come up with a specific number, right? So now we looked at, okay, in a perfect world, what would insurance cost us on a fully insured plan in 2017? What would it cost us in 2018, 19, 20, and 21? And then compare it to what self-insurance basically cost us over those particular years, and then kind of do the analysis between the two. So if you're looking at your executive summary, that's kind of the task, the background, and the overview of what we wanted to come up with. And then behind some of those tabs, not to get crazy into the numbers, but they're there if we want to talk about them. But as I said, our goal was to try to recreate what a traditional insurance, what we call fully insurance, would look like over the last 4 years. And then take that information and compare it to what our self-insured product actually did cost us. We broke it down into 2 areas. We broke it down into everything excluding medics, and then just medics on its own. Medics is for the older population, that's supplements and Medicare. So when we looked at those analyses, we basically found a couple of scenarios. One, that looking at over the last 4 years, it's been about revenue neutral, like using a standard deviation of about 2 or 3%, because it's not an exact science, it's more of a guesstimate. That over the last 4 years, we've been about revenue neutral on the health plan excluding medics. And then 2 out of the 4 years, it was actually profitable. So 2 out of the last 4 it wasn't, 2 of the 4 it was, overall about average. On the medic side, we looked at it and said, well, we've had a really bad year last year. It's really kind of spiked up, and kind of threw us off the chart. If we looked at a 4-year average, it doesn't make sense to stay self-funded on that arena. But if we pull that 1 year out, then it would make sense. Looking at the cost savings, though, would be our recommendation to try to go back to fully insured insurance for the medics coverage, only because the savings wasn't big enough to really justify the risk. So we look at it from a risk reward standpoint. The reward was not great on the medics plan. The risk was high, but overall it's not night and day where you say, hey, this absolutely needs to go fully insured, but it would be our recommendation to consider fully insured on that piece. And then our recommendation to stay self-insured on the rest of the medical program that's out there. We also took a couple of deeper dives into a couple of different areas, which was, as Dennis mentioned, we have $160,000 self-insured retention, right? That's the deductible we take per claimant. So we have the option to choose higher and lower retentions. But as you look to buy lower retentions, just like your auto or homeowners insurance, the premiums go up, right? If you take higher retentions or deductibles, the premiums come down. So we did an analysis looking at 3 different retention levels, and looking at those retention levels, again, the cost savings between premiums, but the expected losses you would pay in those layers was about break even. So I think the $160,000 that you guys currently have as it pertains to a deductible level is a good deductible level. Doesn't make sense to really kind of play around with it in increments of like 10 to 20,000. You have to kind of move something significantly, maybe 50, 75, $100,000 either way. So looking at that analysis, we think you guys are well positioned at $160,000 retention. As Dennis said, you guys buy excess insurance above that up to catastrophic. So if you have a very large claim, you'd only pay the first 160, you have reinsurance above that. However, we currently don't buy, the town currently doesn't buy what they call an aggregate premium or aggregate insurance, which caps the amount of $160,000 deductibles you can have in any 1 year. So you could have unlimited 160s. I know in the past you've had some budgetary concerns in regards to, again, you look at it from a risk tolerance standpoint. How much am I willing to risk? How much am I willing to pay for insurance? One of the things that we recommended is you may want to look at potentially getting quotes for an aggregate reinsurance that caps the amount of $160,000 retentions you have in any one particular year. That's sleep easy insurance. In the event that things went south on you, we know that the checkbook doesn't stay open indefinitely. So that was not an area that we looked at. And then the third area that we looked at, which we think is something you may want to consider based off of budgets, and this wasn't part of our scope to look at what's in the enterprise fund and whether or not you have enough money in there currently. But we put in what we call confidence intervals, right? So when we're self-insured at $160,000 and we look at historical claims that have happened over the last 4 or 5 years, we try to predictively model what we're going to have in the next year, the next 2 years in claims, looking at historical data to try to predict future data. Well, that number comes with a confidence interval. Higher the number, higher the confidence interval, right? So if you're going to put $10 aside, I can tell you there's zero confidence that that's going to be enough money to cover your claims. You put 10 million aside, well, that's 100% confidence or 99% confident that you're going to cover all your claims. So it's determining from your own budget standpoint, what's the right number to set aside from the town's perspective to make sure that, you don't have to keep coming back and asking for additional funds, that you have enough money to be able to encapsulate basically the expected losses going forward, right? And you do that in unison with what you've been able to put into your enterprise fund. Some municipalities who are self-funded have been able to accumulate some significant surplus over the years, so they can be a less conservative in their budgeting. They can maybe predict that 62, 65% confidence intervals, so they put a little bit less in, therefore giving savings back to their employees in regards to premiums, because that gets built into the premium number. Other communities who haven't been as fortunate to be able to put that much money aside and are looking at a very slim enterprise fund, you may want to be more conservative and say, we should put more money in here for that rainy day, right? It's no different than our own personal finances. If we're living paycheck to paycheck and we're making some big purchases, we might not have the money in the bank to be able to pay for those. So healthcare is obviously unpredictable. We don't know when people are going to get sick or when catastrophic events happen. So as a community, you want to basically be able to say, in our opinion, if traditional or fully insured insurance premium is going to cost X, our working rates in totality should at least equal that, right? So we're at least putting that aside, because that would be our other option, is to go fully insured. So if we're at least putting that aside, what does that equal from a confidence interval? And maybe it's enough to start building up a kitty. And as the kitty starts to accumulate, then later on down the road, you might be able to be a little bit more aggressive in your rates going back to your employees to give them some relief, because you've been able to build up that capitalization and surplus in your fund. Right? So in essence, our findings were, Town of Bellingham's doing a good job. Don't get me wrong. It was a good report. It was, I think Dennis hit the nail on the head. It's something that you guys should do on a regular basis, just to make sure that you're in touch with what's going out with other options, considering the amount of spend that you guys have on insurance. It's a very significant number, and it's just making sure you know what's in those numbers, making sure that the reinsurance costs that you're getting are actually competitive, the administrative costs are competitive, and more importantly, that you're budgeting the right amount of money to set aside, and then comparing that in totality to what your other option would be, which is buying fully insured insurance. Risk management 101 is, if you can transfer cheaper than you can retain, by all means transfer it. But if you can retain cheaper than you can transfer, in this case, seems to be the case, then you want to do that, because at the end of the day, if there's $2 or $3 million of profitability in your insurance premiums, it's nice that the town will be able to keep that and not your insurance carrier. Right? Converse to that, you got to make sure that you handle it properly, right? You just don't kind of, wing it a little bit and then find out we're caught without, not paying attention to the cookie jar, so to speak, and we're underfunded. And then I know it's difficult in municipality. Where do you come up with it? We just can't raise the price of the widgets, and we can't raise the prices, raise the price of service, and just make up those deficiencies in funds. So It doesn't happen overnight, it's kind of a discipline that's gonna have to happen, almost like your stabilization fund, constantly trying to put some money aside for that rainy day to be able to build up that surplus. So basically, the report that you have on there, I went through the overview, but each one of those illustrations, those spreadsheets that are on there basically support numeric data that goes into what our findings were in doing the comparisons. And you can see those. If you want to speak to them individually, I'm more than happy to go through those as well and talk about the specific numbers, or whether you just wanted to kind of have a bird's eye, what was our findings and what we were set out to do.
I have a question on the confidence intervals.
Yep.
And I'm looking at the documentation stuff on the screen there. When I look at the 160K retention and the 200K retention, we're looking at expected losses on the left-hand side. In the 62% interval, they look very similar between 160 and 200. And I'm just trying to understand why maybe I'm missing something, but why they seem to be so close and why we wouldn't. If you could just explain that a little deeper. I mean, I'm seeing 7, 8, 9, 62% confidence interval. Then I'm looking at 200K, 7, 9, 8, 6. So it's really, really close.
Yep. So what we're looking in this particular arena is we looked at 3 different self-insured retentions, right? We looked at $160,000. This is if the town took the responsibility of all claims between 0 and 160 for each claimant.
Right.
And the other one's within 0 to 200. each
200.
claimant.
Yeah. Follow.
So what it's doing is when we do a stratification of losses, which is on the previous tab, we actually look at all the claims that happened within 160, all the claims that happened within 200, and all the claims that happened within 250 over the last 4 years. Take the average for those 4 years, and there's slight difference between obviously the 160 and the 140. So to go up by $40,000, we're only looking at another, say, $100,000, $150,000 of claims that the town would have incurred by taking that bigger deductible. So you would have got some savings on the premium side, but you would have paid on annual $150,000 more in claims. So that's what's taking that into consideration. They are close because you haven't had a ton of activity in those layers.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay.
And each one of those is, this particular confidence interval is providing both programs, the MedX and the major health program that's on there. And if you looked at what we're averaging in losses on MedX and what we're averaging on the healthcare side, it's about 6.3 million on the main healthcare program, and then 1.5 on the MedX has been the 4-year average. That's what gets you to that 7.8. But that's the average, right? So that's why the confidence interval is only at 62%. So what this is saying is if you put $7.8 million, in addition to, you have to pay the claims handling, you have to pay the reinsurance, whatever broker's on it. This is just the claims themselves. 62% is a low number, right? It's not a huge confidence that it's going to fall within that.
Right.
If you start getting up to the 83%, that's a little bit more, in my opinion, my professional opinion, a little bit more palatable. You can say, okay, now it's an extra $1.4 million or something that's going into $1 million. 800,000. So an extra 800,000 going into that number, you get you a little bit more comfortable. And then the higher you go up, and then you can buy reinsurance, which is that aggregate stop loss, when you get up to about that $10 million number, which will put a finite ending on it. So when it hits 10 million, then that's it. The reinsurer would pay the rest of it. So now the town of Bellingham is now capped on a specific basis and also on accumulation basis of claims at that 10 million mark. And then funding anything from 0 to 10 million would give you that confidence into what you're looking for. If you're looking for 100% certainty, you buy the reinsurance, fund up to the $10 million attachment point, and then you just say, "Oof," that's our worst case scenario. That's doomsday.
And what you said on the aggregate cap reinsurance, to higher that number, whether it's 10 million or 8 million, if we said, okay, the number's 10 million, that would cost us less than at 8 million, correct?
Yeah, at some point, the reinsurer just won't go
They
there.
won't go that low.
Because it's
Yeah.
sort of like, we know we're gonna be paying losses and we can't charge enough premium, or it's just
Right.
gonna be so ridiculous that you're gonna be swapping dollars.
Yeah.
So there's a number where they'll usually look at kind of your loss pick and attach it about as low as kind of 115% of it, sometimes 120, sometimes 125. That's usually the range of playing. And the closer you get to the 115, the more insurance premium it costs you to get to 115, the less expensive to go up to 125, but then you take on more responsibility. So you're kind of within that range. So we actually got some hard quotes, and if we looked at it, I think that's in the last tab. And it's $160,000 retention based off of 683 enrolled. That's both programs that are on there. If we looked at, say,
Those premiums, right, yeah.
1215, which is kind of means It's gonna take all losses paid within 12 months, but then, incurred within 12 months, but then paid within 15, these medical bills will trail. So that particular cost is about, $63,000. So it's a price tag associated, but that puts a definite ending on what it could be. But every town's different. Some towns, when you get to those big numbers, like, I'm not gonna waste the $66,000. Sometimes it could be a stopgap measure, meaning that you buy it for a couple of years until you're able to build up the kitty and have no idea what's in your enterprise fund. But until you can build up the kitty to it's a point where you're willing to take more risk. And then you're like, you know what, we don't need to spend the 66 anymore. We've accumulated enough money in here that we can take the training wheels off and we can just kind of go full board right down the street,
So in your analysis over the past 4 or 5 years, would you be able to determine in like what years that may have been a benefit for us to purchase that stop loss premium, that the average cap reinsurance policy?
So
Any thoughts? I'm
Yeah.
just curious where kind of does it make sense, or where, if you're looking at for your average?
It is tough to look backwards on there, but if we looked at, if we go to tab 2, right, if we look at that, that's, self-funded versus fully insured cost comparison. And if you look at the column that says losses paid within retention, and you look through, obviously the 21-22, that's a green year. It's like 3 months because obviously it always trails by 3 months, and we started this project back in the fall, believe it or not. So you're looking at the years like 6.7, 5.5, 6.3, 6.9. And I'll keep in mind the enrolled is a little bit higher back in 17, 18. But on average, it's been pretty consistent, right? So there hasn't been, we haven't had this crazy, linear regression off of the chart that said, oh my God, in this 1 year, we had 10 million total outlier. Every year's been 2 million. It's been pretty good, like say, watch to this thing. So from that standpoint, there is a lot of argument to say maybe you don't need the aggregate coverage because there's a lot of consistency in the data. It just comes down to one's consistency in the data, the other one's a risk tolerance. Yeah, people take and say, yeah, but with my luck this year, that this is going to happen. That's what happened with MedX, right? Last year with COVID in 2020, you look at the losses, which is, if you turn to tab 3, and you look at the MedX losses paid within that retention, and you go down 378, which is again, it's like 3 months, 3 million, then 1,000,005, 1,000,000, 1 million. That 3 million is the COVID year, obviously with the aging population that had more care, more hospitalization, more urgent care visits. That went through the roof. So that was an unexpected, you can expect in self-insurance, it's usually 1 in every 5 years. Statistically speaking, you're going down a bad year, the other 4 tend to be in line. No one probably could have predicted COVID as to what that was going to do when you had so much hospitalization and contagion within the same population in 1 year. But that's kind of that 100-year storm that you don't usually plan for. It comes, you're like, oh man, I can't believe this just happened. So, predicting that going forward again, I don't know. Who knows? It gives you a different insight as an actuary looking forward. But if you discounted that, it kind of makes sense, but not to the point where I think you save a 50 or 60 grand, be enough and fully insured versus that. For my opinion, when you're spending, $2.2 million and you're gonna potentially forfeit 60 to have no upside to it. That almost seems like no brainer. Slide that one back to fully insured, take the risk off the table and move on. But when you're looking at the major program, and on average, if we're hitting that $6 million, we're saving $2 million a year in premium. That's significant enough to really maybe roll the dice in an educated manner to make sure that it just continues along those paths versus full insurance and make it move across the ledge money.
Any other questions from the board?
No. Just a couple things. We have put the wheels in motion to look at going fully insured in the MedX based on the recommendation. I think most of we have a third-party administrator that consults with us on an annual basis, assists with competitively bidding for the reinsurance. So we do competitively bid every year for the reinsurance to make sure we're getting the best price. Obviously, that would possible. Yeah. So I think one of the key points is to make sure that in the good years, we continue to, and we're doing it the last 2 years, add to the trust fund.
Yeah.
In 2015, 2016, we got caught about $1.5 million in the red. We had to go to town meeting and take money from stabilization, and there were a couple of tough years there. We had to increase premiums, but it was because we basically blew through all of the reserves that we had in the trust fund because we didn't want to increase the budget. We had enough in the trust fund, so why increase it? We don't want to lay off people. We want to, and the easy thing to do is health insurance doesn't have a constituency to yell and scream, I need bodies. I mean, but you got to pay attention to it in the good years as well as obviously the bad years. So I think it was a lesson learned 5 years ago. How quickly it can turn around. We went from $3 million in the black to $1.5 million in the red over like a 3-year span. Happens quickly. Last couple of years haven't been terrible, and hopefully next year will be as good as what's expected.
You said it's difficult. You have to discipline yourself, no different than your personal life, when times are tough or whatever it is, it's just constantly putting that money away. And then when you see that savings account in there, it's like, let's not buy a big flat screen TV. It's like, no, you're supposed to keep it there for the rainy day because that year is going to come, 1 in every 5. And that might not be perfect, but maybe it's 1 in every 7, maybe it's 2 in 8. But historically speaking, and statistically speaking, it's usually a 1 in 5, actual analysis that comes through. So it's like, just save it because you're going to need it. It's easy, like you said, easy to take from it.
So just to clarify, you are saying that even if we didn't have COVID, you'd be recommending full medics?
Yes.
Okay. Given our policy, how much we pay, and comparing it to other towns, what is a reasonable number that we would have in our enterprise fund as a percentage of that number?
That's a difficult comment, because it's all over. There isn't like a reasonable number that sits on there. We've got some municipalities that are just loaded with cash, and they're very conservative on what they put in their they probably budget for a 50% confidence interval. And then we've got other clients, whether it's on the municipal side or on the private side, that are extremely conservative in nature, probably more in the mid-80s. So I would say to you,
Mid-80s,
85%, so I think that's a number in our recommendation. It's about 85% to fund for 85% of the expected losses into your enterprise fund.
Mary, translate that for me.
I'd like to add to that as well. So I had an opportunity to chat with Matt last week, which was great. We went through and we touched on some of the things that we had discussed in our conversation. But one of the things that is somewhat lacking from this study that was done is an analysis of reserves. And that is a very key component, as you've heard a couple of times tonight. Being able to rely on your reserves and lean on your reserves in those difficult years is important. There are industry trends that recommend a municipality look at anywhere from 10 to 30% of the operating cost. So if our claims were about 10 million, then you'd be looking at around 30% or $3 million worth of reserves. So there are percentages out there that we can look at that don't have to get into the complex calculations of confidence intervals, but you can look at what your operating costs are and a typical allocation that you would expect to have in retained earnings.
So at some point you'll be doing that.
Exactly. Well, what I would like to see happen is if we are going to commit to doing this study on an annual basis, that we expand the scope of that study to include an analysis of our fund balance and take a look at our operating costs to make recommendations along those lines.
So to go at one point when we were 3 million positive to go to $1.5 million negative, there was a 1.125 million annual impact. And at our current reserves, we'd burn through that in 1.9 months.
And part of that was
1.9 years.
Part of that was because we were underfunding. We were being told by our third-party administrator, hey, you need to appropriate $7.5 million. But we knew we had money set aside in the trust fund, and rather than lay people off, rather than not do the things we needed to do, we burned through the reserve. So you need to make sure that you're listening to your third-party administrator who's essentially setting up, what you're going to need to fully fund this, and then having the reserve on top of that, and not assuming that you're going to use the reserve to supplement your appropriation to come up what you're going to need for a year-to-year basis.
And I think in the time frame that we had that massive swing, we had a number of employees who exceeded the 160,000 payout. Is there a norm to that of how often we would exceed the 160,000
No, there's no norm, but if it happens on a regular basis, you'll find that out.
I mean, we got hit, I think it was 5 to 10 people
Yeah.
that had cancer or some other catastrophic illness.
Yeah.
That,
I'm sorry, but one of the things we also have to keep in mind is all the people under the 160 that hit us. Because we're insured after the 160,
Yeah.
we get the reimbursement.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we're buying excess insurance.
Yeah, it's up
Right.
to.
right, so I'm just
It's gonna
wondering.
be the 100 under, you know, the 100
That's
smaller
it. All right,
plans.
thank you.
I mean, I can tell you that the most I've seen is 12 in a year, but they're 12 over 160,000, so all expenses we're getting reimbursed. I could have, 75 that are at 159,
50,000.
and, it only takes, it builds up. And that's what happens, and I don't see those to predict. I see
Right.
the large ones.
This is a question too. If you start getting a lot of claims over the 160, then your reinsurer, who's the one providing reinsurance,
It's gonna
above
raise your premium.
that, or mandate a higher attachment.
And I remember the last time this was done, so maybe I'm dating myself, but how often should we be doing this analysis?
I think we refresh it annually now. I think it's a $9 million budget. I think it warrants a review on an annual basis. The estimate that we got to continue doing it is very reasonable, and I think it makes good sense.
Because once we have the data, adding one more data is not that
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, it's a 20-25% of what the actual
That's right. Yeah.
contract is.
And we can sit here next year and say, well, this is where we thought we would be, and this is where we are, but, and take 3-year averages, you can't just, put everything in 1 year. Is 3 years a reasonable number to look at, or is it?
Well, we can start building down from there, because now we have 17 going forward, so the database will continue. It doesn't change, the 17, 18, 19 years don't change, because it's what we call, paid and incurred, so it's not like workers' comp where it's gonna go back to a previous year, it's not. What makes it difficult, I know Mary and I had this conversation, is, to go back even further, some of the carriers don't even have that loss information, they purge it after about 4 years, so we'd have to try to get the data from your third-party administrator and see if they can produce it if you wanted to add additional years beyond 2017. But at some point in time, looking through the rearview mirror is only going to help you so much, right? So it's like, okay, we've got 4 years of data, now I'm going to be 5, and each year build on that. And it's more current, and you don't have to start adding in medical inflation and everything else that goes into it, and COLA adjustments. I think you get a good foundation to start building off of this, and giving you direction moving forward.
Did some of the federal programs account for these added costs? And we were potentially reimbursed for them?
Not reimbursed, but.
No, I mean, not
There
like
have been things
offset.
that have happened, yeah. The age 27, I think that dependents can stay on plans until they're 26. I mean, that's something just in the last few years. I don't know if there's any other things that you can, I know there's been a handful.
But
over
if
the
we
last
were,
few
but
years.
if we were self-insuring and COVID had dramatic increases to our self-insured costs, that skyrocketed in that time period.
So are you asking if we had access to any federal
Yes.
programs?
So offset it.
So the answer is no. And also bear in mind that there's about 10% of Massachusetts communities who self-insure. So there's 38 communities according to the Department of Revenue out of the 351. So that population who would have had access to any program that you're referring to would be very small. So no, that's not where the dollars were targeted.
So where that number is so small, what makes it the right decision for all those other towns to fully outsource, and what makes us smarter than everyone else?
Well, that's a good question, Mary asked me.
Risk.
Yeah, Mary had the same question. So first of all, you've got to eliminate the towns who are probably paying $2 million or less in insurance, because then you look at risk reward on that scenario. Do you want to take too much of a risk to have 10-15% savings on that? It's not worth it. So when you look at your totality of the spend, which is close to $12 million, now you start to say, okay, there's significant savings that could be on the table if you can assume some risk and be able to take that into consideration. So that's number one. Number two is it has to make sense financially. So there could be scenarios where, depending on demographics, the health of the population that's out there, you look at the analysis and they could be transferring cheaper than they can retain. Health insurance is one of those things that, believe it or not, you can still be getting renewed at 130 or 140% loss ratios. So if that's a scenario where it doesn't make sense for you to take a lot of risk, then you would continue to transfer that risk out because your population is using more than they are in savings. And then some of it's just, both in your shoes and my own hometown for 3 years, and sometimes it's just tough to make changes in general, right? So it takes a lot of analyses, it takes a lot of want and desire from the staff, like Dennis and Beth, to look into it and to be able to do the analysis to come back and say, yeah, it makes sense to do it. Some people just like the status quo and just continue.
So maybe the question is, the three of you, so of the 38 towns, does a town like Bellingham fall into a typical sweet spot where you might look at a town in Western Mass, doesn't make sense, but Boston is on the other end of the extreme, and
Well, I think
we're just in line with
I
those
think that's
38?
why we do the analysis. Keep in mind, there are large purchasing groups. So you might have, down the Cape is all in one purchasing group. So all of those towns are in, so that wipes out whatever number of towns there are. But the easy thing for someone in my position to do is just say, let's get some prices from Blue Cross Blue Shield and Harvard Pilgrim. They'll send us a bill and there you go. That's how much it is. I mean, this is a lot more work. It's something that we've been doing for a long time. I think what's important is, I've been looking at this for 35 years, but eventually, I'm going to retire and Beth's going to retire, and the board needs to be up to speed on how this works and understand it, because it is kind of one of those things we say, oh, we're self-insured. Well, most people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And I think having a presentation like this on an annual basis, so we're all very much
Absolutely.
aware. At one point in time, the position on the finance committee was, you finished the year $1 million to the good. So why would we supplement the funding that's
Right.
going into the health insurance? Just use that to add to, you're saying you need $8 million, you got $1 million, so you only need 7. And then talk to us next year. I mean,
Keep taking it.
it just creates tremendous risk. If you're gonna do it that way, you might as well just get the bill from Blue Cross and have.
Right.
I would agree with that.
So maybe at some point in the next several weeks or months, we'll come up with the target reserve for FinCom.
Yes, we can certainly look at
Say
it.
we, yeah.
Have to get our tax rate certified and all the other things.
Yeah.
But as I said, Mike, I'd like to have us expand the scope of this
Yes.
study to include that, and potentially look at that, inclusive of other communities as well.
That is something we can do.
Yeah. Good. Dennis, we need to vote for that?
Nope.
No, okay, great. Okay, excellent. I think it's a great idea too. That's for sure.
It's almost like a financial checkup.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Every age, I mean, Dennis hit the nail on the head. We're spending that much for insurance. It's just good to know what's going on, and you're not budgeting the right amount of money and putting it aside. And if it's sometimes it might just be giving you the leverage you need to be able to sit down with the various committees to say, hey, listen, here's the professional, write-up that says we need to put it in here. Because like I said, it's on that side of the desk and it's easy to just grab that money without having to make cuts, or we'll worry about it later, kick the can down the road, and then when the can comes to roost or whatever you like,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, now what?
And you already have a core set of data to work from, so you're just adding on an additional year. So the effort isn't nearly as exhaustive as this effort was. Correct. 3%. Correct. So
And we've got a whole staff of actuaries too, so if we wanted to get that particular getting into kind of specific reserving, IBNR calculations, talking about what should be going into that reserve fund, we've got staff to go.
excellent. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having us.
you.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
I wish I was giving you guys a check, but.
Yeah, well,
Anytime.
yeah, right.
Give me a check out.
Yeah, we just gave one. Well, Kelly did, not we. All right, thank you very much. So next on the agenda was a co-part inquiry. We're passing over. So next on the agenda, we're right on time, is Grove Street solar speed limit sign replacement. So I believe all of you folks are from the Grove Street area or Grove Street. Is there one person that is here to speak on behalf of the group? Please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind, state your name and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Marsha Goodspeed, and I live at 44 Grove Street.
Okay.
So this all started because I was out walking my dog and I happened to notice a spray painted sign that said DPW. And I understand the first, 8 or 10 feet, give or take, is owned by the town. But it's still on the front of my lawn, so I made a couple of calls and, the first couple of people I talked to were like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Did you call Dig Safe? So then I eventually got to the DPW and they had called the foreman saying that they wanted to put a solar speed limit sign in. And there was nothing that I could do about that. And I asked why I was not notified. And they said, we don't have to, that's not a requirement of the DPW's job. So, this started, I just feel that I should have been notified. I believe that as a community member, I understand I don't technically own the property, but I think anyone who owns a home can agree something happening in your front lawn. It also is happening in the middle of my property. It's not like where one of my neighbor's property abuts me and it's kind of off to the side. It's right in the middle. So it does bother me that I would have just come home from work one day and there just would have been this flashing sign. And then, I was told that there was nothing I could do. And I just, it concerns me that there's a lot of like misinformation out there that, because I also have a problem with this culvert. So I'd faced a lot of just people kind of telling me something off the top of their head. And then I call a couple other departments and they're like, what are you talking about? Why would anyone have told you that? And so it's definitely been just a challenge. If more departments could just inform the community members, even if it's just out of respect, even if there's nothing I could have done, just saying, just so you know, like I have animals, that it would have just been nice to know if I should have put them in a different pasture or whatnot. But then more to the point, I also, now that I know what that is, I would prefer if that was not put in the middle of my property.
Yeah.
I spoke to all my neighbors, so these are the neighbors directly on both sides of me.
Yeah.
And then our other neighbor that's 2 down, he could not make it because he travels a lot for work. So he wrote me a letter, if you want me to read that aloud. But it basically.
If you want to, but Mark, first, I want to say thank you for coming in. And one, I want to apologize to the town of Bellingham for making you feel like you had no choice. Your phone call is exactly what you needed to do. And we're happy to do that and take the phone call. Your concerns are our concerns. Personally, I wouldn't want that sign put in my front lawn either. And that's how I think many of these board members feel as well. So Dennis and I, on Thursday, when I learned about this, we actually went down to Grove Street and we drove up and down Grove Street. We saw where the sign was and we looked for ideal locations to put the sign. Now, going back several months, residents of Grove Street came here to concern about the speed on your street. We acknowledge there's a lot of traffic on your street, like many streets in Bellingham, a lot of traffic. You can't, Maple Street, Farm Street, you name it, Central, it's all there. We're doing the best we can as a town. So the recommendation from the safety officer was to put a sign. So yes, they put it, the DPW put it upon, hey, put it in the best place, it's solar to get the most light. We've since gone down, and Dennis went down again today, and we agree. There will be a sign. We need to put a sign there to slow the traffic down, but we are going to relocate it so it does not interfere with your home or any of your other homes. We're going to find a location where that's going to fit to meet your needs, because there's not one of us here that would want that sign in our front lawn. So we couldn't agree more. And I'm glad you're here. I apologize that you all had to come down, but the result is that we are looking at this. We're taking your concerns seriously, and we're going to move that sign. But I just want to make you aware, we really do need to have the sign. So the decision for a sign is done. There will be a sign, but we're going to put a sign in a place where it doesn't interfere with your home. We just don't want that. I don't want bright lights shining in your house. I don't want you to have to go buy blinds and all that other stuff. You may already have it, but we don't want to do that. We want to put it in place. Now, the challenge we have is, Grove Street has that big apron, a tree apron, so it does need solar. So we're going to have to find a place. I believe we've identified a few locations where it's not even in front of a home. It's like, it's not even in front of a home. It's kind of on a corner or before a corner where there's no home, or there's a tree next to it. So you're not going to have that shining in your window. Okay. I mean, really, that's what we want. So Dennis, did you want to add anything?
We were walking around the
pouring rain Thursday.
Trying to find the right spot.
Yeah.
But I know that we did talk to the DPW, and as Don said, I'm glad that you contacted us and we're able to follow up on that. There is an ex-painted, same side of the street further down, seems to be quite a bit of brush there, but if anyone has a concern with that, let us know. But I think it's buffered enough. I don't think anyone's gonna see it in their house. And we think there's enough sunlight there to charge it.
Mhm.
Solar signs can be great, but they need the sun, the battery. There are some with batteries, like the one in front of the middle school that operates on a battery, but they can take it into the middle school and charge it every so often. You can't have battery charge signs all over the place. And, on some streets, Grove Street is a tough street. You live there. When we were creeping up and down it last week, it wasn't easy. We spent some time in Jack's driveway. That was us.
Yeah, yeah. You saw two cars there. It was us parked walking around.
So I think we've got a spot, but if you don't think it makes sense, let us know.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a spot that will get sun, and there's also a brush there and enough buffer that I think it'll work.
I do too. And again, but we're open to other suggestions. But, I'll just say this, we couldn't agree more that there's a lot of traffic. It's coming from Milford. I will say you'll probably have less traffic coming from Milford because as they close the Amazon facility in Milford, which I know there's a lot of traffic coming from there, that facility is being closed. If it hasn't already closed, that's going to change. Unfortunately, that traffic is going to move over to Maple Street because they're moving a lot of the distribution into Bellingham because the facility, but they're moving into other distribution facilities as well. So it may help you there. It might impact other parts of our town. It is what it is. So hopefully that will help. And coming forward in the future, the whole redevelopment is going to happen at that Depot Street, Grove Street, Hartford Ave with a light. So hopefully that's also going to change. I've been an advocate on this board for a number of years to put a light at that intersection for a very long time. And now there's the bad, there's the warehouse, but then the good comes from it, which is a new intersection, which is going to help traffic a great deal. So hopefully we're making improvements. We are very sensitive to speed on your roads. We had folks from Taunton Street here a while ago. We're very sensitive to it. There's no question. So are there any other questions or comments? Ma'am, I saw your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yes, Linda Goodspeed, I'm Martha's mom,
Okay,
and I live at 44 Grove Street as well.
okay.
I've been here for about 4 months, and I'm just wondering why you jumped all the way to these bells and whistles and flashing lights and blinking lights. It seems as though there could be interim steps you could have taken before you got to this point.
So that's a fair question. What interim step? Because we went to the safety officer and we asked him to come back with an analysis, and he's very well equipped. We talked at one point about speed bumps to slow traffic down. That wasn't feasible. We can't widen the road. We can't do any of that work. So that seemed like the best, lowest cost alternative. We can't put a stop sign in the middle of the road. He did look at all of our possibilities, and that was the best possibility. Yes, sir.
I think what Linda may be getting at is when you come from the Milford side on Grove Street all the way down to the end, there isn't a single heading in that direction. There's not a single speed limit sign, for that whole stretch of the road.
And
Even a regular speed limit sign. There's one headed in the other direction, which is closer to the intersection, but there's not one speed limit sign. There are some slow children or,
We'll take a look at it.
signs.
Yeah, okay.
But there wasn't a single sign put up, and that's where I think Linda was referring to. Why go with a flashing solar panel type of, speed limit sign as opposed to just putting a sign up, letting people know the speed limit is 25 or whatever.
Dennis, do you recall what the speed limit is on Grove
I
Street?
don't recall what that.
I think it's 25 miles an hour.
Is it?
I have a
Can you double
note,
check?
I have a note from when Suzanne spoke to Lee Rose, and it was, one of the things on the list was to fix the 2 signs that are falling that are not visible at 25 miles an hour.
But those signs, it sounds like were folks going toward Milford, not coming from Milford into Bellingham.
There's only one sign going towards Milford.
Okay.
And that's the very beginning of Grove. but there's no sign whatsoever coming in the other direction. Which I
That-
think was the concern,
Yeah.
is heading in that direction.
So one of the things that we can do, I mean, we'll definitely take a look at it. Now that I think about it, 'cause I drove all the way up to Milford and turned around and came back. I don't recall seeing a sign either now that I think about it. No, I believe you. But now that I think back about my drive, I don't recall seeing one. So that may be a place as from Milford, as you enter Bellingham, have a sign 25 miles per hour there. But I can tell you, even with signs, depending upon the level of traffic, unless we put police officers there on a, not a regular basis, but kind of an inconsistent to, we don't want them to know when we're there. It may not slow them down. Unfortunately, they're not the greatest deterrent. However, they should be there. People should know that it's 25 and not 45.
I think that was part of the discussion that Lee brought up, was that if we actually posted signs that was below the average, that we might get in trouble because it's, what's the speed, 85% of the average speed.
That's
is
if we
when
did
it-
the step.
If we
Yeah.
did a study, I wasn't thinking
Right.
about doing a speed study. Yeah,
Right,
That
but
may-
25 was considered much
yeah.
less than what would likely come out in the speed study.
I thought how you determined that you needed the blinking sign was from the speed study when the police sign had been put on Grove Street, like a couple houses down.
No, there was no study done. That was
No.
just, that's a mobile traffic sign that we place around town, but there was never any
Mhm.
traffic study done on Grove Street. It's just a recommendation that the safety officer, people ask for signs all the time of the select board, and rather than have the select board act on it without information, they ask the safety officer to go out to evaluate it and come back with a recommendation. And I can tell you, sometimes they say we don't recommend the sign, and sometimes they'll offer, make a recommendation to do something like this.
Without the requirement of solar, you could probably put a couple of speed limit signs, in spots that wouldn't, affect anybody.
But don't just replace the solar sign, put it on the sign. I don't want that either.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll talk to the DPW and safety officer and go down and take a look and find a location for a regular speed limit sign, close to what's the speed limit, to put that there. And then that flashing light, I mean, we could start with just a regular speed limit sign, then put the flashing, or just stick with what the safety officer said, and, we'll do both immediately to slow the traffic down. We definitely want to slow it down. It's a tough road. Understand, it's a tough road. Anything else? But that's why we're here. Feel free to call and we'll do our best. And I'm glad I went down there on Thursday to check it out. Anything else? Yeah, sure. Your name, we didn't get your name, sir.
One other.
Your name, please, for the record.
Brian Boyd,
Brian Boyd. What's your address? Pardon me?
48 Grove Street.
Okay, thank you.
And, my wife just mentioned that, because, she's an educator for over 30 years.
Mhm.
And she said there is a spot coming in that same direction where it's a school bus turnaround.
Yeah.
And she said, wouldn't that be a great spot somewhere? Yeah, wouldn't that be a great spot to have a speed limit sign? for a regular
Mellon
board?
Street, isn't that Hopewell?
That's the one we're gonna be spending some money to redo, where it comes out to Bellingham.
Where it comes out to Bellingham, yeah.
Right on the
I
bottom.
thought there was like a little sliver of Hopewell like that.
Oh, you're right, it's Milford's on the other side.
Yeah, right. Mhm. Okay, great.
Definitely take a look at that.
All right. Anything else? We good? Well, thank you for coming in. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We're right on time, Dennis. This is great. Other business, ARPA project approval.
Like me to read the motion?
Sure,
Mr. Chair?
please.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the projects as listed herein with said expenditures to be under the direction of the parties noted. On the amount of 49,000 for the purpose of the South Main Street standpipe recoding.
So we have first, we have a second.
Second.
Second, do we have any discussion, questions? Move for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. All right, we need a vote on our August 1st, 22nd, August 22nd, and September 20th minutes.
So moved in its entirety.
We have a first, we have a second. Second. Shaheen. Any questions? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Statements?
Yep. Yeah, abatements are next.
I'd like to make a motion to accept July 2023 capital improvement charge $45, sewer $341.63, trash $39.35, water $983.19, grand total of $1,409.17.
Second.
We have first, we have a second.
Discussion.
Discussion.
I assume the removal of the 2 penalties was in line with our.
So we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? None. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And August, I move that the select board debate August charges in amount of $1,109.27 as presented. And I think there was a little,
So this was the one we abated 325 Lakeview last meeting, meeting on August 22nd, so we backed up those charges.
old charitable.
Okay. I'm looking here. There's more. Aren't there more? I'm looking at a
He
chart
just did
here.
a total, he just did.
You
a
do the
total.
aggregate
I just
total?
total, yeah, just basically we deduct the,
The ones we already.
Where you
yeah,
say,
we-
okay,
yeah.
all right, good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Did we have a second?
No.
No,
I
I'm
was
not sure
gonna
we
say
had, we had a first, we need a
Second.
second. We have a first, we need a second.
Second.
Second, we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? No? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're through our abatements. Bid award, roadway and drainage improvement, various streets. Pull that up.
I move the contract 2022 R&DV road and drainage improvements various streets be awarded to the low bidder of the Russo Corporate Plainville, Mass.
We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? None? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Oh, skipping right through. All right, Dennis, Veteran Service Officer appointment.
Yeah, Dennis Pimenta, who's the Veteran Services Agent, notified us probably 4 months ago that he had accepted a similar position in his hometown and wanted to transition there. He's been holding the fort down for us for the last 4 months. We've got an interesting situation in that we've got Anna Milo, who's a 21-year veteran. The Army, I'd like to have appointed her and look for the board's ratification. Anna will be essentially dealing with the office hours half a day. She's also working in some finance roles for us. But so she'd be half a day working as the VSO in the office. And Mike Hennessy, who is on the Board of Health, who's also the Veterans Agent in Marlborough, lives in town, and Mike has been assisting Dennis Pimenta over the last, since Dennis was appointed. Mike is a wealth of knowledge, and the Department of Veteran Services recently went through a conversion of their software and made things a little bit more difficult for some of the newer veterans agents, and Mike was able to come down and assist. So what we're looking at doing is having Mike handle the administration, and Anna will be essentially the Veteran Services Officer. Mike can't be the Veteran Services Officer here and in Marlborough. So the Department of Veteran Services said, fine, he can be the administrative assistant, but he wouldn't be able to be the VSO. Anna being the VSO, that'll be worked into her current position, so there's no additional funding necessary for that. And then Mike would do the administrative piece. So that's kind of the plan, to put that all together. And I think it makes good sense, and it's going to give us something for years to come, as long as Mike's willing to continue in that administrative piece, because that's the key piece. That's Anna will be doing a lot of the intake. She'll be gathering information, but only half day a week. Will she be in that office? So it would require the appointment of Anna, as well as Mike as the administrative assistant to the Veteran Services Officer. That position being designated special employee status, because he also receives a stipend as a Board of Health member. So kind of hand in hand. I know we're on VSO, but I think it's the whole office setup. I think it makes sense, and it serves the veterans well, having somebody like, especially Mike involved in the program.
So Dennis, do we need to just ratify your appointment for
Need to
Anna?
ratify my appointment, Anna Milo, as the Veteran Services Officer.
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second. Second. Any discussion? No further discussion. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
And it's the position, not the individual, when it comes to special employee status. I'd be the administrative assistant to the VSO, and that'll be Mike's title.
Mhm.
And we'll be handling the processing of everything veterans for us.
Okay, do we need to ratify the special employee
Special-
status?
Yeah, the
Any-
special
a
employee
motion to
status, we need
ratify?
that.
The position, special
The
employee
position.
status, not the person.
Correct.
We have a first,
So moved.
we have a second,
Second.
we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? No? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the signing of the fall town meeting warrant.
So I put the fall town meeting warrant up on your meeting materials. We're just awaiting KP Law's like red line edits, so just like small edits, but all the articles will remain the same.
Okay.
Sign it.
Yep.
Can I
And
ask a
it's gonna be
question?
posted by Friday.
Absolutely.
Is the Mullen rule in the warrant because we have never specifically tackled that?
It is, KP Law recommended, there's an article in there, and I did take the liberty of having the select board sponsor it. KP Law had recommended it, and essentially what it does is it allows a member who missed or is new to a board, missed portions of a public hearing to get caught up and then participate in the
Yeah.
public hearing. So KP Law felt strongly that it's an important provision to adopt, because it could be a public hearing here, but typically it's the planning board and zoning board.
It's so they can vote at the end, right?
So that they can
Yeah.
vote,
Yeah.
they can get caught up,
Yeah.
watch video or read minutes, and then
Mhm.
participate in the final decision.
Old business.
Well, the items that we are classifying as our running list of town projects,
Mhm.
could we break those into three categories? One that I would say is resolved, two is in process or and with a date, and others that we have yet to even tackle, because as I look at the list, there's certainly some things that we have a plan, such as the upcoming retirements, and that's reasonable. The Red Mill project, but we still have a number that I don't think we know that they're there, but I don't know that we'll put them on the agenda to say, let's do something about them. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think it's fair.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
So maybe just a less than one sentence synopsis, like laundry update. God knows. But School resource officer status resolved. Because I think it has to be nice to know what we still have to tackle, and we still may want to add things to it.
Okay.
Even in like the upcoming retirements, you talk, what's the timing of when we have to take action
Yep.
for those things, so that it's a little reminder. Thank you.
So Hillary, can you do that for next meeting? Great, thank you. Any new business? None? Dennis?
We hit, and we're taking care of a couple of things that I had, but we had terrible timing with our municipal aggregation renewal. The last month, it's 3-year agreement, time flies, but it was December. We know the N-Grid rates. I know I sent the email out from N-Grid. They called kind of frantically to ask, we know you have an aggregation plan, and we know it's expiring in December. Have you gone out to bid, and are you looking at renewing? And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, it's on the agenda, because they're going from 0.11 for the generation piece of your bill to 0.34, and Eversource is gonna follow suit. That comprises about 40% of your bill. So when you think 40% of your bill tripling, it's pretty significant, more than tripling. Yeah, it's significant, and we know it's coming. The utilities, offer, it's called the default rate. It's there. Their rate will be in play from December through April. Eversource the same thing. And then they'll look at a different rate for a summer rate. Usually the summer rate will come down some, so it won't be quite as high. I know you saw the information that I had provided. We did go out seeking bids, and ours will be doubling, which is a lot better than tripling. We looked at 1 year as opposed to 2 years, because the recommendation from the consultant is it could settle down.
Yeah.
But we're kind of held harmless at that 0.2. Because we know Eversource and National Grid are gonna be, 0.34. They may come down in the summer, but then they're gonna go up next winter. So we'll go out again next year and see what we can do. But a lot of people, I think we've got about 90% of Bellingham residents are in the town's municipal aggregation plan. And of course, if anyone isn't happy with that rate and they feel they can do better on their own, you can certainly opt out at any point in time. So really all it is providing a layer of protection to those people that don't want to go out and try and shop on their own. And that's why the legislature enacted the legislation to let municipalities kind of go out and get this added layer of protection. So information will be mailed out like it always is, and we're required to do that under the provisions of the general law that we adopted, informing residents what the new rate's going to be. National Grid is doing that now with their winter rate, trying to have people prepare for what it's going to look like. So it's what people have been talking about. You put oil in your tank, you know what that looks like. I know I just filled mine. So it's going to be difficult, but I think the aggregation plan is doing exactly what we hoped it would do, is buffering those bigger increases from the utility. So no action needs to be taken. We're in the program, and as I say, those rates just came in competitively bid, and those are going to play. And if anyone wants to opt out, obviously they can. Just a couple of
Dennis, what supply are we staying with?
it is the
Next
same
era?
company. Yeah, it's
Okay.
the same company. So that's good. So it's not a transition where somebody else has got to come in and take over all those accounts. So from that perspective, it'll be seamless.
Are you gonna put that information up on the town website too? So as people get on social media and asking questions about it, there's a spot that we can direct on that.
Yeah, our consultant, well, we got the Power Choice icon on the
Yes.
homepage, and our consultant that puts the program together for us is putting together that literature. So we'll have that
Good.
fairly soon.
Okay.
It'll be mailed out and it'll be on our website.
Perfect.
Yeah, and they just loaded, they have to load every quarter. They have to show how they're performing, and the third quarter information just went up on, you go to the Power Choice icon and you'll see their latest update. But it doesn't have the new information as to what's going to happen in December yet. It's not there yet, but it will be. Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. I guess it's a company that Kelly McGovern, when she was in the Board of Health, or a nonprofit that you've been trying to get to come to Bellingham. In case you see anything, it is on our website. It's a group that go town to town once a month or a couple times a month, and they do cleanup events, and they try and encourage residents to join them. So if you see any information out there, that's what it's all about. It is next Saturday, and there are details on the town website. I think it's 9 to 11. And you'd be here, and they're just encouraging neighborhood cleanups, and they'll be out cleaning up some locations in Bellingham as well. The Verizon pole locations, Verizon's been out there quite a bit. I think they're close to removing the poles. They're almost done splicing. We had a few power outages a week ago. We're through that in the center of town. So hopefully we'll get that, and then we can get Walsh back up there, finish the job.
Dennis, do you think the timing will have it done before, the end of the year?
It's hard to imagine it's gonna get done that quickly, but
Okay.
hopefully some of the paving will be done. to
Just the
rough out
paving,
some
yeah.
Mill and pave, because it's just,
Oh, I understand. I'm just curious.
potable heaven out
For,
there.
for, for, just for, the town people that are listening, you get a lot of questions.
So I think it's gonna be a spring finish.
To that end, like, you probably know it, for your next report, could you just break down like that portion, but then by the water tower, the Center Street intersection,
Read all the different projects.
well, the projects, but like,
Where they're
what's
at.
the next 3 months look like, and
Yeah.
what's the completion? Because people think that the project is one continuous thing at this point, and
Yeah, they're three
I
very.
don't even know how to answer the questions. I mean,
Yeah, and all three are running into difficulty. The Center Street project, obviously, it's mitigation with the Fafford 40B that's just about done. They're waiting on some of the signal pieces. They've got everything in place, and once, who knows how backward they are, but I will find out, get an estimated time of completion. And the 126 tip project, we've been asking for a project schedule, so hopefully we'll get that soon, but we've been asking for the same thing. They are out there working, but they're working on that culvert right now, down by the bus barn. Everybody's finding alternate work routes to avoid that section of Route 126.
what about the middle school culvert?
You mean the stormwater basin that's gonna go in front of the school? That'll be part of the schedule, so hopefully we'll have that soon. And then the mattress collection goes into play November 1st. We're gonna get some information out on that, but the fees are gonna be hefty. If you wanna have them picked up at your curbside, I got one estimate of $100 per mattress, which is crazy. We'll be taking them at the recycling center. There will not be a fee for the first one, but obviously so if you have mattresses or box springs, put them out in the trash now, because there's no charge for them. Very important. Yeah, because it's a
Manual intensive process.
it's banned from the waste stream effective November 1st. So these incinerators and landfills can't take them anymore. They've got to go to a place like the Green Mattress, which is just exploding in Milford. And essentially you can drop off your mattress there for $40. And what they do is they take it apart. They take the wood out, that has to be recycled. They take the metal components out, that has to be recycled, and the textiles have to be recycled. So it all begins November 1st. I know we're gonna have some upset people when it goes in, but again, we're gonna stay to the one free at the each year at the recycling center. Buy you a mattress now. And the charter commission meets tomorrow night. That's all that I have.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Just the executive session that I'll be asking for.
Okay. I believe we have satisfied our agenda, and now want to pull the board for executive session.
It's for contract update, the board on contract negotiations, and we will not have anything to
Any further to
for the
discuss?
public. No, and Mary McKinnon and Beth Cornell Smith are going to be joining us.
Okay, great.
And hold the board to go into executive session about contract negotiations.
Yes.
Mrs. McNulty?
Yes.
Mrs. Grant?
Yep.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yep.
All right. Oh, yeah, thank you, Dennis.
Chairman, I
I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good evening.